hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to set up and we'll get started. So we have a few people on. And so share my screen very soon. You should be able to see my screen. Not able to hear me, let me know. Tackle these issues via chat. The session so that we can share with others and those who haven't been able to make it to the session today but would like to see a recording. We got a lot of requests from our international teachers to see the recording in Japan and in Australia because it's basically the middle of the night there and they couldn't make it. So we're going to do a recording of this session. So I'm going to mute everyone. Unmute everyone once we're done with the session in about 40 minutes or so. And if you have any questions or issues, please chat. I'll keep my eyes open to see if there's any kind of activity in the chat session. All right, so thank you everyone, those who can make it to attend this particular webinar from Tuva. We have done a few of these, but for specific school covers or specific networks of schools. This is our first kind of open webinar around Tuva. We decided to do this now a few weeks before schools, just so that get into the rhythm again, get everyone excited again for the new school year, and we'll be doing these webinars fairly regularly over the course of this upcoming academic year. And you can envision, some of these will be very subject focused, like math or science or statistics or social studies, and then will be more kind of concept or kind of skill focused when it comes to critical thinking, modeling, predictions, things like that. So, keep a lookout throughout the course of this upcoming fall and into the next year on regular webinars or somebody else on our team, another educator, and we'll take it from there. And so, to kick off the first one today, I just want to give everyone a basic overview of Tuva, kinds of things that you as a teacher can, and more specifically, kind of really bring to your students. It's the whole goal, and in education in general, is just to obviously provide learning experiences and opportunities for inquiry and critical thinking that will bring students become better learners, better participants in school, better citizens of our country. And so the whole idea is to really just give you a brief overview of what it's all about, show you some of the powerful but really engaging tools that we have available, and kind of a taster of them, data sets or activities, and we'll take on questions as they come. So started, here we are on tuvalabs.com, and the landing page sort of is our vision for our students, which is to discover the world through the lens of data. So in this case, you've discovered the census. You can also discover climate change, environmental issues, discover global issues, discover sports, discover topics related to energy. So you can really discover anything and a critical lens of any topic that is relevant to you, to students, that you have to teach as part of your curriculum through the lens of data. And that's just a really powerful approach because data has stories that it can tell and the insights that one can gain that are just really powerful in terms of being able to do that and being able to learn how to do that. So again, what we start off with is basically each one of these blocks, as you know, is a data set, and these data sets are curated then a variety of authentic data sources. Each one is from an authentic source. Each one is an authentic data set, authentic in the sense it's real. We're not making up data in most cases. In general, we also have this notion where the data sets are around a wide variety of topics. So just scrolling down, we have data sets on viruses and bacteria, New York City unemployment and employment data, Chesapeake Bay. So for a lot of our teachers in the Maryland, Virginia area, Chesapeake Bay is a pretty big the environmental ecosystem there. We have GMRI, green crab data. So GMRI is actually the Gulf of Maine Research Institute. So this is primarily for our educators in the state of Maine. Some more civics-related data sets like the President of the United States, and we have a wide variety of them. And things that we're really excited about in this upcoming school year is play sets around, again, a wide array of topics, but also starting to organize them. So we're going to do a pretty concerted effort of sets. So that we have people are join and they aren't able to. So we'll have to make. I just got a note saying that this, for what reason, we have a limit of 8 people, and obviously there's more than people trying to join. So we'll fix that very soon. Data sets, we have wide them, and to get started then just log in first. So I'm going to log into my teacher account, and you can log in via email, via your username, via Google. So sort of support different ways. And I've logged in, so here's kind of my dashboard. And just go back to the data sets right up front, right? So I mentioned there's going to be concerted effort and in terms of curating and organizing these data sets into categories and potentially by standards, potentially by even kind of critical thinking skills and things like that. So we're still thinking deeply about kind of how to better organize these things because it's quite difficult to do. So if you have ideas on that, feel free to reach out to us via our community section up here, or just send us an email at support@tuvalabs.com, hello@tuvalabs.com. Many ways to reach out to us. On Twitter, we're pretty active on Twitter and always looking for engage with our educators there. So back to the data set, lots of different really fun, interesting, relevant, meaningful topics to cover with your students and with that are part of your curriculum data set. So I'm going to click on this one, new employment data for 2014. So this particular data set curated for the kind of summer program that is taking place right now. This is from the very reputable source of data. It's basically from the Department of Labor, but it's hosted at this institute called at the University of Minnesota, and they call it Integrated Public Use of Microdata Series. So it's called IPUMS. That data comes from the survey of New Yorkers and their employment and their age and things like that. So here's a typical kind of data set page. Just to notice is we have a really kind of a brief summary of data of the set. Too complicated, just a really simple 2 or 3 sentence summary of how what this data set is about. And you can download the data in CSV or Excel format if you'd like. You can share it with your colleagues. There's a little tutorial on how to visualize data, and we're going to jump into that pretty soon. And scroll downwards. This is the main, kind of primary Tuva experience, and it's got, it might seem like there's a lot happening here, but it's pretty simple. I mean, we have basically split up the notion of learning through lens of data in 3 parts. So the first part is you actually need data, and the actual kind of raw data, right? So we have that here, table. This is sort of the data in a raw format and it's in a tabular format. And we sort of, instead of presenting it to students in this way, there's another format that we like, and that's called a table. It's called a card view. So this particular left side, it's the same data that you see in the table view, but it's presented in a card-like format. So for example, this particular 1,522 rows, if you just keep on scrolling, and we have sort of taken that and turned that into 1,522 cards. And each card represents an individual to the table. Each column is an attribute. Here, each row of the card is an attribute, and here are the different values, right? So it's the same data that you see in the table, but it's presented in a card-like format. And it's basically because a lot of research has shown that students understand and make sense of data easier if it's presented to them in this manner, as opposed to something that's sort of difficult to do within a tabular-like format the way it is here. So we've got the data, whether it's in a tabular form or it's in this card form. And we also have these keywords at the bottom. So these keywords are they're sort of really simple kind of definitions, right? So if there are certain attributes are difficult for students to understand, or they don't know what the units mean, or that, we sort of have a keyword section for most data sets where they can get a really simple definition of some of the attributes. So we've got I mentioned that there's three parts to this interface. The first is the data, the tool. So that's the environment here. So all these different dots, and if you were to sit there and count them, I promise there will be 1,522 dots in this little. And each dot, as you can guess, represents an individual or a card or a row from the table. Have this kind of what we call visualization environment. This is where a lot of the magic around grand charting and exploring happens. And second part, and third part is the actual learning. So what are we trying to do? What kind of a lesson are we going to create, or what kind of lesson are we going to present to our students? And we call them activities, and we have 4 of them here. And we're going through, these activities in general. We as our Tuva team, we have some wonderful educators who are really good at creating these kinds of activities. You can get your own activities as an educator. You can take activities others have created and use them for your own purposes. So we'll go with that as well. But kind of reiterate, there are 3 parts: the data, the tool environment, and then the activities. And to get started, for now, what we're going to do is we're just going to focus on the data and the tools. And we're going to come to the activities. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hide it for now, so it's on the right side, hidden in the screen. So let's focus on data and the tools. And we really encourage our teachers is to give their students for the data. Let me see if there's no, there isn't. So give your students an opportunity to get familiar with the environment, getting familiar with the data that they're exploring. And noise, not sure where that's coming from. Yvonne, not sure what that's coming from. But getting back, so this notion of giving your students from 10, 15, 20 minutes at the beginning of the classroom or right at the beginning of the school year, let's get familiar with the Tuva environment. Let's get familiar with what does it look like to, basic sense of what the data is about. And so that is basically just to take specific attributes from the card and kind of dragging them and dropping them into x-axis or the axis. And so we start there. So the environment is the reset button is sort of like your initial state of the environment. These dots are scattered over this canvas, and take the category attribute here, and we're going to grab it and drop it on the x-axis and watch what happens. And so each one of our individuals in this data set, each one of the New Yorkers in this data set is now placed into one of the categories. They were adults, they were a teen, or they were just young adults. And we say, okay, I did this, and I also want to see what the breakdown is by gender. So I'm going to grab the gender attribute and put it here on the y-axis, and imagine, now the initial adults are now split by gender, males and females. So by giving this kind of an open-ended, unstructured opportunity for your students to explore data, it's happening. One, they're getting familiar with the Tuva environment. Typically we see that lots of kids today are really good with technology and with computers, and so they get familiar with Tuva very, very quickly. It takes them literally about 20 seconds to figure out what's happening. They have to drag and drop, and it will happen, and they can click, and things will happen, and they click on one of these tools, kind of button the toolbar, and things will happen. And so, students are very kind of inquisitive in their nature, and they become familiar with the learning environment very quickly. Also, kind of second, get familiar with data. So looking at categories, attributes like age, gender, race, they're in school or not, right? So in this particular data set, there's these different attributes, and giving them sort of this unstructured opportunity, they're getting more familiar with aspects of the data. Now, in terms, you get an understanding of whether a particular attribute is numerical in nature or categorical in nature. So in this right now, we have age category as an attribute on the x-axis, and you're on the y-axis, and both of these attributes are categorical. Because there's three categories of ages: adult, teen, and young adult, and there's two categories of gender, male and female. And your students will kind of even easily start understanding there's two kinds of attributes: some categorical, some are numerical. Going to the reset button. So as your students become familiar with the environment, there's lots of features that we've already built. We just released a series of really powerful ones that I'll show you today. We're going to be creating a little blog post about them and showcasing them for everyone else to see in this week. But let's get started with just some of the basic features, right? So let's grab a numerical attribute, which is called age sphere. Now we'll all the individuals by their ages, and their gender again, and let's put and tackle these two things. Now you might be wondering, what is this color kind of band here, and what is this sign here? So the color band is basically what we're doing is we're assigning a color or a range of colors for a specific attribute. So the gender, like if I click on gender, what will happen is the data will be, the color will, the circles will change color based on the attribute that you've selected. So gender, there's two categories, male and female. Male is blue in this case, male is purple in this case, and female is blue. You can kind of see that this is male, this is female. Do the same thing, let's say instead of gender, we were to do, so we do borough, there's 5 boroughs in New York. We've got Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, and Staten Island. And so you can see that each one of the little dots represents a color borough. So in this particular example, there's a male, age 45, and he's from Staten Island, and Staten Island is a blue, and it's also blue, and it's difficult to see. You can actually drag the legend out, and it will adjust, and it's easier for you. Similarly, like here's another one. Here's 26 from Staten. That's also again a blue. If we were bottom, female, age 16 from Queens. Queens color green, and so this one's also green. And so clicking on the attribute, the color of the dots are reflected by clicking on the attribute, essentially. And that's sort of what's happening here. And kind of 3 things: dragging onto the X and Y axis and clicking on them to update the color of the of the data points are basically a meat of most of the explorations on Tuva. And you have 3 dimensions, right? So now you're looking at 3 dimensions of data. You're looking at age, binder, and burrow. And so students, it's a really powerful kind of way to look at different attributes of something at the same time. And there's that we can do, but this is sort of basic, understanding of how one can, start getting familiar with the data. In terms of kind of toolbar, so the different kind of graphs and charts that you can create. So we've got plot here right now. We can also explore a line graph for particular kinds of data. So if you have a time series data set where you've got time on the x-axis and you've got a quantitative variable on the y-axis, a line graph might be appropriate. We've got that, so if you click on and so what will happen is all dots will slowly converge into a pie-like format, and you should see that in a few seconds the pie will be created, and so there you go, right? So you got females, males with 2 pie charts, and sort of get an idea of which borough is the most well represented. So 7266 males were from Manhattan, 7014 males were Brooklyn, and so these are great opportunities to do kind of question around ratios and proportions and things like that. And when you get into the numbers, you can click on it's kind of like it's a settings icon, and here you can click on percent, and I think we can click by cell. Here you can get the percentage distribution of all the individuals by their borough, right? So 1% of the individuals are from Brooklyn, males. There's 29.5% females from Brooklyn, things like that. So that's really a way to get percentages and counts on this kind of visual representation of the data. And so sort of, if you kind of comment about the Common Core and some of the new standards that are being adopted around the country, this notion of, using the right tools. So if you were to ask a question, one of the first things that they have to sort of get is that to create multiple visualizations will give you different views of the data. And some of the great things in the context of the math classroom that's really good using this kind of environment is that students learn about what kind of tools, whether it's a pie graph or a graph or a bar graph or a box plot, should they be using to visualize the data in a particular way to answer the question. So that's it's a big example of how an exploratory environment where you kind of get to play with the tools gives you a practice of choosing the right tools. So just a side tangent on one of the big Common Core practices is around being tools and estimate to that. Reset button, so everything breaks apart and we sort of get back to our film environment where all the circles are sort of randomly scattered. Many of them, 1,500 points, it takes a little bit of time, and it's sort of just a couple of seconds to get there. And one of the things that you'll see here is that the animations really help students understand that it's the same underlying data that's being visually represented in different ways. You create a pie graph, each kind of transforms itself into a small pie and organizes into a large pie. And to create a bar graph, it will create these small bars and things like that. So that animation is on purpose to help students make a connection that it's the same underlying data being represented in different ways visually. So talked about kind of the case card. We talked about the attributes here and different, how each dot represents an attribute. One thing we can do right up front is let's kind of have the gender. And here on the x-axis, we'll get our distribution by male or female. Now, what if we only wanted to study the female population in the survey? Right? One should want to be able to say, I want to ignore everything I want to ignore all the males in this particular analysis or in this particular inquiry that I want my students to do. So that is, you see this little sign here, which is like a filter sign. from our kind of Excel environment. We're going to come to sign. So this particular attribute, gender, is categorical, and now it has both males and females. So what we want to do is we only want to keep the females. We want to fill out the males. So I'm going to uncheck this, and so what is all the males are going to go away. They go to the side right here. And now I only look at my females. I'm happy with this. I'm going to go back to my card. Now I can sort of the age, and so the age distribution of, and I can do, I want to calculate the mean of all females. So here's my mean age, and so that's 5.76 is the mean age. So what I've typically done is I've taken a set that had males and females. I wanted my students to only explore the female population, and so what they had to do was they had to filter out the male population. And you can sort of apply the same filtering mechanism to outliers. If you have, so let's kind of take the I don't think their data set has any outliers. Maybe they do. So let's take the income by year. Let's put here. And so if you come, like, look at this one. There's a individual age 46 that's got a very high income. So this particular individual is sort of the outlier in this. And so what I can do is I can kind of select this particular individual, and I can, and so I can exclude it, and that particular case will also move away to ignore, right? And so if I want to ignore some more outliers, I get these two individuals who also have very high incomes. I don't have outliers in this particular exploration, so I'm going to select these two. I can, once I put them, and two will move away. And as you can see, as they're moving out, the scale is changing and the distribution is changing. And you can do some more interesting analysis, excluding the outliers. Let's say if you want to get everything back, and to look at the males, you want to look at the outliers, I just reset all my filters, and it comes back to the way it was. That's the filter feature that we recently developed to help students being able to fill out the data that they don't want to look explore. So I know a lot of students use Tuva for their chemistry, physics labs, biology labs, where anytime they collect the data from experiments or labs that they're doing, then kind of upload that data on Tuva so they can do visualizations and analyses. So once you're happy with visualization, so let's grab age very quickly. Let's apply race, and let's say this is sort of what the students have to create. You can download. Oh, what happened here? Got stuck. So now, and have it. And so let's say students wanted to, you wanted your students to include this in a report that they're creating, or a lab report, or a project, or what have you. And so they can easily, by labeling appropriately. So this is I'm just going to give it my chart title, and now I'm, sort of download it by pressing this button. They'll be able to download it on their computer, and be able to then, kind of copy paste into a report. So here it gives me a download sign, and I can download it. So we have lots of students who do that, where they'll use Tuva for their labs, and then when they have to write a lab report, they just download the image and copy paste it into Word or Google Docs or whatever they're using to create their report or create a poster or or whatever else that they're doing. So that's another kind of a useful feature to have, as this ability to download. Of course, there's a lot of different. So like if we wanted to do a histogram, this is one more example. Do a separate webinar just to talk about the different graphs and charts that you can create. This particular one, we're creating a histogram of age, again, by gender. And, here in the histogram case, I can change my bin size, increase the bin size, I can decrease the bin size, and things. So by pressing this minus or plus button, I'm actually decreasing the bin size, and pressing the minus button, I'm actually increasing the bin size. So you can see the actual things are getting smaller and smaller, thinner and thinner. And so that's happening here, this particular histogram. So to explore kind of a brief primer, and again, I encourage you, as you're introducing Tuva to your students, to just give them some time to get familiar with the environment on their own, basically exploring and getting them to the feel of the tools and feel the data sets, and I'm sure that they'll be able to pick it up very quickly if you've seen that over the course of the last 14, 16 months. Very quickly, I'm going to look at that. Go over how to upload data as the students do in that. Yes, we'll do that one very quickly. Yes. I will show you how to upload data. Very activities before we move on. We're half an hour in, so we've got about 10 minutes. So the activities are here, and as a teacher, there's a couple things you can do. One is you can view the whole thing in one go, right? So I want to read the entire activity to make it available for me. This is an activity that was created by one of our content creators on the team. And, so this activity, I can view it on my own. I can try it out as a teacher. So I want to see what my students will do, right? So I want to try it out on my own. I want to get over what the activity is like. And here you try it out. You get kind of the same experience. This is exactly the experience that your students will get once you assign the activity to them. So you kind of go through, and you can what the thing looks like. For an iPad, yes, it works on an iPad. A little slower. We haven't released the native app on the App Store, but you can go to tuvalabs.com via the browser on your iPad, and it will work fine. So we have many schools use Tuva just from iPads, and it does work. Sort of, trying out the activity on your own, right? This is about 16 steps. It's not too long, probably about 30, 35 minutes, maybe 40, if you want to do the whole thing. Once you're happy with the activity, you can directly assign it. So I can click on assign, and you'll have two classes. We'll show you how to create a class. I've got two classes here, assigned to Summer Pro and assigned to Summer Pro. So I'm going to press this. I've got two classes. This is for the summer program. This is a demo class. This is an example class that I have. But assign it to them very, very easily. And so now what I've done is I've taken this activity labeled distribution of income, and I virtually assigned it to all my students. And so it's that, really. It's about that you want to actually take an existing activity, and if you want to add something to it, if you want to remove something to it, you're going to go here, and you can click copy and modify. So I'm going to click on copy and modify. And what happens is I can take an existing activity, and it will actually take me to a form where I can modify it. So I can remove questions, I can add my own questions, things like that. And so that's the page here. Second to load, but sort of a place where I can edit my own activity. So I've taken an existing activity that I like, but it didn't meet my requirements 100%. And what I do is I want to add some components to it. I want to remove some components to it. Things like that. I can do that here. I can update it, and I'll have a brand new activity that's of my own. Print it. So if you go back to where we were, activity. So right here in this button, you get a little thing which is modify, edit activity, and download. So you can download it and print it. So we have that. We download feature. So in case you want to print it out and read it on your on over the weekend before you assign it or things like that. You can also do that very easily. So let's do the first thing, which is uploading feature. Right? So let's go to the upload first button. You and all your students, the basic of Tuva, will have an ability to upload 5 data sets completely for free. So we have there's this Tuva Premium that we have launched for schools based on just incredible demand. I can talk more about that a little bit later. But actually, the upload button will allow you to upload data, and you've uploaded them, you have your repository of all your uploaded data sets. So all the data sets that I have right now in my repository. And when your students will have the same features, right? So I click on upload data set. There's 3 ways to upload data set today. It's to just select a file. So you can upload it using Excel, CSV. So if you have, typically what students will do is they'll record the data on a piece of paper. They'll input it in Excel or Google spreadsheets or something like that. And you can use that particular spreadsheet and select a set and upload it here. Select one from the computer. What we have done here as a direction for you and your students is we have some instructions. So the critical thing to understand is, values and the first row are treated as attributes. And it's an example spreadsheet here that you can check out. So let's click on the example spreadsheet. You can show this to your students so they get an idea of what this looks like. So uploading the data set, the first row, all basically treated as attributes. So you need to have your data set in this format. It's very simple. And then first row, so this is attribute 1, attribute 2, attribute 3, attribute 4, attribute 5. And then you just have your appropriate values for each one of those data sets. So this could be age, this could be year, or collecting things at time periods. So this would be, time, and you have 1 second, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, things like that. So I think this sample sheet is helpful because students will know what format the spreadsheet needs to be in order for us to be in over Tuva to be able to read it. Choose the data set. You can give it a little title. So we recommend students give it a title that they can remember. This source, this is optional. If you're using a third-party source to upload data, you can include a source. It's an optional kind of field. But the most important one, which is data privacy, right? So by default, this set is only available to me, right? So when I upload the data, the initial setting, whether it's you or your students, is that the data set is only available to you. Nobody else has access to it. You can choose to share it with anyone that has the link. So when you change the setting to end with the link, what it means is that if you were to share it with your students, or if your students were able to share it with their lab groups or with their friends or whatever it is, they should change the setting. But we have taken the road of caution, which is that no matter what data set you upload, default, it is only available to you. And so that's just policy we have adopted, and that it's worked really well so far. We haven't had any issues with any students or any teacher, kind of upload data that they don't need to be, or share data that they don't need to be, by understanding the differences between the two settings. And once you upload the data, maybe in this My Data Sets kind of tab, I've got 2 different data sets, example ones, and you can see kind of the settings, right? So I set called request for, and that's only to me. And with that, sometime 6 months ago. I also have some more data sets like world wildlife population that anybody has the link can get access to it. So I share the link with someone, and if they click on it, they will be able to see it. And here on the right side, there's different settings. You can email this. You can share this particular data set with someone. You can edit right here at the details. Download it. So if you want to again something, or delete it. And so that's sort of the 4 settings. It's very simple, but the whole idea around this is to give students a really simple way to visualize and play with the data that they're collecting as part of surveys that they're doing or as part of labs that they're doing on a week-to-week basis. And so these, feedback we've gotten over the last year of making it really easy for students to create in charge. Start want to do them by hand and not want to work with kind of complicated Excel features or something like that. Here, just record on a spreadsheet, upload Tuva, and you sort of have a very simple way, very powerful way of graphing and charting and exploring the data. This feature, we had, one of the things that we noticed is that we had students uploading, 10, if not hundreds of data sets in over a quarter. So do certain labs and they'll upload 5, 10, 15, 20 data sets. And so not out of hand on our case. So what we've had to do is basically restrict it to 5 sets per student or per teacher. And, of course, you can delete the data sets and whatnot, but if you upgrade to the Tuva Premium, then we will give you unlimited, data set uploads. And that's just infrastructure and security and things on our end. We've had to introduce that feature because once students get used to the Tuva environment, they sort of like it and use it across different subject areas. They want to use it in the math classroom, they want to use it in their science lab, they want to use it for their, essay practice, all kinds of things. And so we've sort of had to, restrict it just because in many cases, in many classrooms, over the last 6 months, we have seen students uploading tens, if not, hundreds of data. So that's a brief overview of the, and again, as mentioned, please keep a lookout for individual kind of sessions that we will do where we will walk through these, these kind of standard features in more detail, right? So we talked about the data set. You've got all the ones, we're adding many more. And you may recall we have a little community section here where you can request a data set. You can request features. You can make comments about what's working, what's not working. There are lots of teachers discussing pedagogical issues about, how to bring authentic project-based learning, using data sets. How do I combine social justice issues in my math classroom? Tuva and the data sets that we have are great to explore these ideas. How do we bring civics topics and mathematical topics in the same classroom? So talking about social justice issues or education or race-related issues and having data there, so you can do a math lesson which is incredibly meaningful and relevant to your students. It's around topics that they're really interested in or it's meaningful to them. So this community section that we have is free for all for doing whatever kind of opinion or requesting data sets or things like that. We have introduced as part of our premium feature in a more kind of elaborate way. So if the school becomes a premium customer, we will accelerate on your data set request and get it back to you as quickly as possible. And like that, just because if you look at the data set requests we've gotten over the last 12, 14 months, they're from all over the world. And they're on a wide variety of different topics. So here's one, for example, sea lamprey and invasive species in the Great Lakes. This is from I believe a teacher in Michigan. There's another one about college majors and genders in the U.S. And we're sort of at a stage where we're not able to handle all these requests. So we've had to prioritize the ones that are submitted to us by our premium customers. But they're there, and you can see lots of different ideas, and you can see other teachers are requesting. It is not U.S. focused only. There are teachers from around the world, and it's just a fascinating kind of thing to be able to track what's interesting to teachers and students in terms of data. And so we keep a track of that here. Here's one on NAFTA, which is this was particularly request teacher in Florida around for their social studies classroom, and so wanted to get data on the NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, to critical thinking piece for the evidence making and critical thinking piece for the students. So just this is a place for all the teachers to kind of share ideas about how they're using Tuva, how can we improve the product, what things you would like to have, and whatnot. Looked at data set upload, the community section, and quickly the dashboard section is sort of your kind of classroom management, right? So you can create any as many classes as you'd like. You just go to your kind of Add Class tab, and if you're teaching a 4th grade class or a 5th grade class or a 10th grade class, you just create it here. And what will happen is once you create the class, you have a tab here just like this one. I've got 2 classes right now. I've got 10th grade summer program and I've got 11th grade summer program. I create a class, I click on the tab, and so some details here. I've got all the activities that I've assigned to my students. I've got like a roster of all my students here. I only have 3 students in this case. And then I've got code, which is kind of a unique 5-digit alphanumeric code, digit 5 alphanumeric code that I can share with my students so that they can join my class. And so this is a way for students to see and join. So you tell them, hey, tuva.com, here is the class code. As they're signing up, they input the class code and they automatically get added to your class. So it's a very simple mechanism, and a lot of kind of educational tools in kind of use this method to make it easier for you to bring this on board. You don't have to remember the password. You don't have to remember the usernames. You don't have to manage any of that. All you do is just share this class code or for students, and they'll be able to manage it from there. Pretty simple. We have some resources here at the bottom, on the footer. Videos on different tutorials. So let's click on that. You'll see different kind of tutorials you can put together. We're putting, there's many more coming on the way in the very near future. Different tools. So there's videos about specific, how do you plot multiple attributes? We just did that. How do you filter data? We just did that. Finding, means, medians. There's sort of more classroom management. Like how do you grade activity? How do you assign activity? How do you add and remove students? Things like that. And we have some guides here on how to create an activity. It's a big thing that we offer in terms of professional development, again, for schools and for networks of schools, kind of bringing in this kind of inquiry-based, kind of based, sort of activities and learning in a classroom or science classroom. And so we have a series of resources we have made available on creating activities. It's a wonderful exercise for educators to go through. How do you take a data set, relevant issue, and how do you turn that into a lesson? How do you turn that into a problem? We do these professional development sessions for our schools, and we've made resources available here. So we're running on about 50 minutes. I went what I was planning on, but there was a lot to cover. Over the coming weeks and into the fall, we'll host regular webinars just like this to tackle specific things that are relevant to you. And if you have any comments, issues, anything like that, reach to us via the community section, reach out to us via email, reach out to us via Twitter. We're pretty much paying attention to you and the results you have all the time. And so what I'll do is I'll stop here for now. If you have any specific questions or if you have any issue that you want me to tackle and discuss now, let's get to those. And as a to this, I'm going to unmute everyone so that you can actually hear each other. And so everyone. And so here we go. And questions, just state your name, what you teach and where you're from, and I'd love to discuss. It doesn't have to be questions. You have any comments, anything like that.
No, it's about to die.
No questions, no comments. Good, bad. Any ideas for new features? Anything to do to continue to improve the experience for you and your students? There's anything on chat? Just by a quick input on the chat, how many of you that are kind of in the participating right now, how many of you have started using Tuva in your classrooms last year or already gotten some hands-on experience with it, and then how many of us are kind of looking at this for the first time and got more questions and answers right now? So Mary, you have a comment, is make it a part of Google Apps for Schools so students are logged in when they log into their email account. We, at the moment, allow for logging in via Google, in that students, if they are pretty familiar with their email, when they're logging in, they can just use the same email. And so right now, we haven't integrated deeply into Google Apps yet, but we certainly use Google Login. So that's a comment there. So most of the people in the audience listening in are basically have used Tuva a little bit, but are more planning on using it this year, and many are learning about Tuva for the first time. And I think the best way for us to continue, queuing the right data sets, building the right kind of features, is by giving us feedback and reaching out to us ideas with any additional kind of feedback. The feature become a very powerful feature, around classrooms around the country, especially when it comes to lab projects, capstone projects, things like that. And as you already know, the new SATs, especially for those who are teaching high school, the SATs that are going to be implemented starting have a big data interpretation, visualization component. So, a lot of different opportunities to bring authentic, critical thinking-driven kind of activities and lessons for your students. I realize we didn't go over kind of specific standards and specific subject areas. Envision that practically everyone in this chat today or in this session today is teaching a different subject. And that's sort of the power of the platform and power of the approach, is that you each use Tuva in your math classroom, you can use Tuva in your science classroom, you can use Tuva in your social studies classroom. If you're teaching AP courses, you can use Tuva. If you're teaching civics or geography or global studies courses, you can use Tuva. So we've seen that. We have teachers around the world teaching a wide variety of subject areas, find a way to use Tuva, especially because the data set is what drives it. There really isn't one subject area that this is applicable to. This is applicable to everything, and it's a pretty powerful, kind of a unique way to do this. We will have sessions in the coming weeks and months specific around subject areas like mathematics, and in the mathematics it'll be on ratios and proportion standards and measurement standards, going back to the Common Core. And SAS has a huge next generation science standards, have a huge modeling component, so we'll be covering that in coming weeks and months as well. So if you have specific topics that you want us to cover, reach to us, and we're happy to facilitate that. So sort of the first webinar that we wanted to do, we've recorded it, so we'll be sharing it out on our website as well as via email, and we'll also probably create something on the community section around it. Questions or anything that I've missed out on so far? If not, then everyone is having a great summer so far. Turns on different schedules in terms of their start time. We have some schools that start as early as next week. Students get back into the classroom. This school specifically in Texas, I'm thinking of, that are back into the classroom next week. Some of you might be starting after Labor Day, but we're pretty excited about the upcoming school year. And this was one of many that we plan to have into the fall. So please feel free to reach out to us. Twitter, email, community section, they're all right places for us to connect and share ideas and talk about what we're doing and how we can help Tuva the right tool and the right platform for you and your students. That's much all I have, and I'll be stopping the recording in 10 seconds. And if you have questions or anything like that, feel free to let me know.